And tonight, my mouth is on fire. What did we learn yesterday?
Oh, see, okay, so I finally figured out to put like the feature on like the Netflix. I finally got all that fixed and stuff. So that was definitely a light bulb moment. My brother had to show me a little bit. He showed me what was wrong with my thing, and so the way I did it was I put that section inside of the TVMA row, which I wasn't supposed to do that. So I had to switch that, and then the when you make the screen bigger, the that text says screen too big and stuff that broke. So I think I had that inside of the container fluid. I didn't realize I had to take it out of the container fluid. So everything started working now after that. So that definitely was a light bulb moment.
Gotcha. Yeah, you shouldn't have, excuse me, any components in the container fluid except the screen size too small div. Um, because that's how we control, hey, don't show the rest of the site, only show this one particular message. But I'm glad you got it figured out. Um, what else did we learn from yesterday? Did we get any light bulb moments kind of watching me work on this site?
That definitely recreating sites isn't like, well, it could be like perfect to a T, but also at the same time you could have moments where you could have a different approach to tackling certain aspects of the website you're recreating.
Absolutely. And sometimes the different approaches may be easier or harder, but they may produce the exact same result, right? So you don't need to always use the grid system to lay things out. You don't always need to use Flexbox. You don't always need to take um, an approach of nesting a div inside of another div. You can get creative in kind of your approach. So that is definitely a good lesson learned. Anything else from yesterday's class that kind of stood out for you guys?
Kind of piggyback off of what Corn just said. Uh, like if you try to recreate something that's older and you have things that no longer work in the browsers anymore, or they're not supported, or um, there's a newer method of everything, and it's kind of just faded into obscurity the way that it was
Absolutely.
originally done.
Yeah, the web was a different place 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? I guess 20 years ago. And so as our demands evolve, as we get into more mobile sites, more mobile responsiveness, as we get into more interactivity with JavaScript, as we move from Web 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, the approaches that we take to it definitely change. So that is a good thing to note. Anything else from yesterday?
We experimented with carousel as a bootstrap feature.
Yeah, so we'll start to see Bootstrap components a little bit more. Our next project is the portfolio website, where not only will we be getting more practice with the grid and divs and all of the stuff that we've been working on, but we will also dive into components. We'll use the nav bar. We'll use cards for the first time. We'll start kind of opening up ourselves up to the world of using other components, pre-built components, so that we don't need to design them from scratch. That is worth noting there. Be careful when you're doing that, because Bootstrap components, you have the documentation to go along with it, but you really want to make sure that whenever you're using someone else's code, you can explain that to someone else, right? Oftentimes as developers, we want to just copy and paste something in. It does exactly what we want, and we're like, okay, great, moving on. But that can come back to really shoot you in the foot, because as you go back to that code, as you make revisions to it, excuse me, um, you want to make sure that you fully understand it, because another developer could come into that project and be like, oh, you wrote this code, can you help me understand it? And you're like, oh, I just found it on the internet, right? It's not really a good approach to coding. So when you are using someone else's code, it is really good to read either the documentation that came with it, or take a minute after you get it working to go, okay, do I understand this, right? Can I look at the CSS and understand what it's doing? Or is there something in the CSS that I don't understand, right? Hey, the CSS is using Flexbox. I haven't really worked with Flexbox before. I'm going to go read into that, make sure I understand it. So all things to consider. We will get more practice with components. We just scratched the surface with them last night. So in tonight's class, we will split class between getting the portfolio site started and then using the other half for the pop quiz. Anything else from yesterday's class that stood out?
We discussed accessibility components and how they can help and how they should be somewhat standardized, throughout.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. We used the semantic elements for the first time. Semantic elements are just a fancy word for elements that are named after the content that are in them, right? So the notion of, instead of saying div ID nav, we just use the nav element, or header or main. And that has a lot of accessibility benefits so that the screen reader knows, hey, I don't necessarily need to read off every single link. Because this is a nav component, the user will probably just want the main component, right? But with a lot of those accessibility features, the reader could say, hey, what are my options for links on this page? And it would know, hey, let me go to the nav section and read those off. So that is helpful for accessibility. That is also helpful for SEO, so that when Google reads your site, they know they can go to the nav section to find other links on your page, compared to a random A tag, which they don't know if that's necessarily navigating around your site or linking to an external site, maybe in an article that you're working on. Anything else from yesterday? All right. I'm going to let you guys decide which you would like to do first. It really does not matter to me. Your options are to get the quiz done first, which is really just recreating the website, or we can do the portfolio first and the quiz in the second half of class. The quiz is just going to be you picking a website and starting to recreate it. That is practicing creating files from scratch. That is going to be loading in Bootstrap. That's going to be getting your style.css linked. And then that is going to be diving in headfirst right into your recreation. So it does not need to be an entire website. It can just be a section of a website. But the goal is to pick something that you think that you can do in give or take an hour. So don't get overly ambitious, but at the same time, you also don't want to just pick something that's an image and go, "Oh, I got the image to show up," right? So getting the right amount of challenge in there is important. Most of you have voted in here. If you haven't, give me a vote. Going once. Oh, thank you. That is everyone. And it looks like you guys would like to get the quiz out of the way first. So does anyone have questions on their site selection, or any questions in general about what we're doing, how to get started?
Like you said, like it doesn't have to be the entire site, just a section of it that you can do. And then with that also, are we expected, like, even though with this class time being 3 hours, is there an expected like time frame to get this fully done?
Yeah, good question. So at 7 o'clock, we'll stop for break, and you'll submit anything that you've already completed. And then if you would like to continue working on this over the weekend, you can resubmit it in Canvas. But the goal is by 7 p.m. to have whatever you have done submitted.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And then you can always resubmit if you would like. So
All right.
in Canvas, I can't. We did do one submission with the grid. So let me make sure that this is available in Canvas. Give me 1 second. So in Canvas, you should now be able to see the assignment. I can just share the screen. This is the site recreation. Oh, I said 30. I should give you an hour on that. Here are just some ideas that I have for you, but it really doesn't matter. You can try the little Google section. You can try this section of the Zoom screen where there are different things in there. You can try a little YouTube thumbnail. And again, once you get one working, you can always expand that out, right? So once you get this done, you should be able to upload the files for it. Make sure you upload both your HTML and your CSS. So Canvas can be a little tricky in uploading files. Once you upload the file, you have to hit add another file, and then you can upload both your HTML and your CSS. And then if it's very clear what you were trying to recreate in your file, you don't have to upload anything else. If you would like to, you can include a screenshot as well, just so I know what you were trying to recreate. Asma, question?
No, you just answered it. The last part for the screenshot is what I was looking for.
Yeah, you can optionally upload it unless it's something that's like really clear or really obvious, and then you don't have to. So I will set you all free, but know that this is not just meant to be 60 minutes of silence. So if you have questions as you're going, if you're stuck on something, if you're trying to debug and you can't figure it out, please, please, please come back in here, raise your hand, or just come off mute and ask a question. If you would like to go cameras off for this section so you don't feel like you're being watched this entire test, that is totally fine as well.
All right, thank you. I was gonna ask that too, if like camera on, camera off.
Yeah, totally fine to go camera off.
All right, question. For prettier, just want to turn off. Do I do disable, or is there like I'm at settings on extensions? So I click disabled, or
Good question. Let me check my own settings. It should be format on save. If you type in the settings bar up at the top, format on save,
Mhm.
you want to uncheck that right here, and that should disable prettier.
All right, so settings, then search for
Format on
format,
save.
format on save, and then un and un click the checkbox.
Uncheck the checkbox.
No.
Yeah.
All right, and it automatically saves that.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
What time did we have until?
We'll say 6:45.
Okay.
We'll take break a little early tonight and then circle back in with the portfolio site. While you're getting your file set up, remember that sometimes the best place to start is not actually your code, right? So if you want to use preview or you want to use the Google Docs file and outline your dibs first to get started, that may help you plan things out. So once you do get into your code, it's a little bit easier.
Throw this over here real quick.
Yep.
Where I'm just blanking today.
All right. Can
Okay.
I see what you are trying to recreate?
So I guess I'm just trying to get this nav bar up here.
Oh, with the Bootstrap website's what we're trying to recreate?
Oh no, I shared the wrong screen. Why did I do that? There we go. Is it up now or?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so kind of ambitious, but not overly bad. What I would do is I would break this up into maybe a col 3, a col 4, and then whatever's left over here. So I would break those up into 3 separate columns and then tackle the content from there.
Okay.
So you're on the right track with your nav. And that's what you're trying to get started on, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a boost here. Let me clear this and request remote. Okay. So let's do maybe a call 3. And we'll say following and browse, just so we can kind of see where it's laying out.
Mhm.
And then we'll do class call 5. And in here, we'll just put our input type text so we can see that box. And then whatever is left, we'll just do a call, and we can do something like text end on those. And then we can say profile and icons.
Okay.
And so let's see what that looks like. I'm just going to pop it open in another tab, even though you may have it open somewhere else. And now we've got an idea of where the layout is, and we can start doing things like, hey, in my nav, go target the input and make that a width of 100%. And now you've got the search bar,
Okay.
starting to take shape.
Okay, I think what I was trying to do was trying to put each of those icons in a separate column, which I don't
Yeah,
think was gonna
you
work.
could do that, but you're gonna get some weird spacing going on there.
Yeah.
So oftentimes it's better to do like just group your columns, and then work inside of them. Oh, I missed this should be an equal. It's like that was bothering me. Okay. Anything else I can help you with while I have you?
That cleared up a lot, actually. I think I should be good.
Cool. Good luck. You can always take a look at the Netflix code that we worked on yesterday too, because that's got the icons that are shown in the right and has the. I don't think we did did we do a search bar on that? I don't think we did a search there, but that may give you some ideas.
Yeah, I'm having trouble getting started as well.
All right, share your screen. Let's take a look.
All right. Go here. Desktop 2.
Okay.
Mine's right here. I'm trying to recreate this.
Okay. So obviously lots of columns here. Is it when you expand that out, does it all fit in one row? I'm curious.
Expand this.
The design out.
Uh,
Yes. Okay. So everything does fit in one row if the screen's big enough. Okay.
Mhm.
So you did a good job on your page background. Now we got to work with getting that choose your fighter to be positioned right. So let
Mhm.
me take a peek at your code. Okay. And we are trying to squeeze everything into a col 1 there, which is why it's wrapping down to the next line. So if we just make this a regular col, it will default to the full width.
Mhm.
And then we could target that. We can say nav col background. I think it was whitish. Yep. And then the color was dark blue of the font.
Yeah.
And now if we take a look, we're starting to get on the right track. And so what I would do from there is say, all right, let me try and get my first image to show up. So you're on the right track here. You got your first call, you've got your source tag, but now we got to work with the actual image itself. So instead of downloading all of them, I'm going to cheat a little bit and I'm going to do this copy image address. And that will let me put that URL right in there without having to download it. So that's a really good tip. It is there's so many options in here. Copy image address is the one that you want, because copy image is going to take the file itself into the clipboard, and then copy link is going to take what happens when you click on that thing. So what we want is the image address. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a couple class cols in here. And I'll throw the image tag in. And so now if we take a look. Oh, maybe they block me from accessing that on another site.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing I downloaded and I put it in my image folder inside of yep.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. So if we just change this to img / oops. OMG, not img. Okay, img. Do
Uh,
we not
oh
have
yeah.
those specific
Yeah,
ones?
yeah, I was missing those other two. But
Okay. I'm just gonna, we'll just do 2 that you have for now, and you can always change them out.
Okay.
Okay, so now they're showing up, but they're not really, let me see the original design. They're not really the size that we want. So you've got 2 options here. You could either target the image and make them a specific size, or you could put an image fluid on it, which is going to make it much bigger until you get all of your other columns into place.
okay.
So I would get the other columns in place and then go from there.
It's not overly too ambitious, right?
No. This is a really good design.
Okay, okay.
And you've got about 20 minutes left to work on it.
All righty. Appreciate it, Max.
Yeah.
I could use some help if you can.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. And Hazad, I'll come to you next. You need help.
I'm having a hard time even dragging images over. So
Okay.
and getting started. So let me show you.
Okay.
You want to see the site that I want to?
Sure.
It's like the top of it.
Okay.
And this is what I have, but I
Okay.
can't images over here.
All right, let me request remote. Now the images may be causing some problems because they are in a like a carousel type of thing. You don't have control over it. So when you,
Saved a couple images in my download folder.
okay, let's take a look there. Okay. So now that you have them here, you should just be able to drag and drop them.
What am I doing wrong? Why it wouldn't drag and drop for me?
You may need to do it into Finder first, and then once you open it in Finder, it makes it easier to drag and drop it.
Doing?
Do you
Is
want
there
to try dragging that one and seeing if you have
That
the
one
same
I
problem?
don't need. I need the Scotland flag. Like, am I doing something wrong on the touchpad?
So sometimes it's easier to grab it by the icon, not by the file name.
Do I
Oh,
do
no,
that?
no. You know what you are doing? You're probably clicking too hard.
Ah, okay. That's what I'm doing wrong. Wait, where did that? Okay.
So that did work. So yeah, I think you're clicking just a little too hard, and it's let me see what they call that. So you are force clicking,
Okay.
which is it says click then press firmly for quick look up, and variable speed media controls. If you find that to be annoying, you can go to Apple system settings. Can you drag that over to this monitor? Thank you. And if you do a search for trackpad, right here is force click and haptic feedback. That, you can turn off. I'll leave it off for you to see if that
Yeah.
helps.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever intentionally force clicked and then it just gets annoying and gets in the way. So we'll leave that off and see if that helps.
Okay.
Anything else while I have you?
Well, I thought I got it started, but I don't know if the initial setup is right with the rows and columns.
Let's take a look. So first thing I notice is our indentation is off and Prettier is mad at us. So before we go any further, let's figure out what's going on there. We've got our opening col 2 and our closing col 2. This goes with the row, but I'm guessing, oops, you wanted this col 8 to be inside this row.
Well, I guess I would need all 3 cows inside the first row. No?
Correct. So this closing div, we're going to move down so that all 3 of these cols are inside the row. Now all 3 are in there, so that is good. We've got an opening, closing, opening, closing. Be careful here. If you wanted to do a new set of cols, you would need to put these in a row as well. So we can't put a column directly in another column without putting a new row between them. So this comes over. This comes over. And now I actually don't see why Prettier is mad at us. Closing all of that out. I don't think it needs this, does it? Nope. Row. All right, let's have Prettier help us out here. It will tell us unexpected closing tag for HTML. That means we did not close our head. And now you're back in business.
Okay.
So if we take a look at what yours looks like, navbar. So if we do something like col 2 and col 2, we can kind of see where that is showing up. This one.
Yep.
And that is now you're on the right track, right? Because you wanted that space around it, and so now you got that. So keep it up.
Okay. Thank you.
I will take these out because you actually wanted those to be spacers. So good work so far.
Thank you.
Anyone else need help?
I do. I'm having a hard time with my latent spark getting the spacing right,
Okay.
and also getting the icons in,
Okay.
and I'm getting a bad hit on Prettier, so I'm messing up big time. Let me share my screen. Can you see it? Oh,
Nope, not yet. Oh, here it comes. Okay.
oh. Right here. I've
Okay.
been asking questions too because I didn't want to, but I can't seem to get it right.
So what is wrong? What are you trying to fix?
What I'm trying to fix is I'm trying to get the space in here like this.
Okay.
And I'm also trying to bring in the search icon, how it is here.
Okay.
And I think I selected the static icon font,
Yep.
but it's not working. I don't think I put it in the correct spot. It's right here.
You did. Go ahead and give me remote control. It might be on your other monitor.
Oh, yes, sir. I'm right here. My bad, Matt.
All good. Okay, so you did put the static icon font in right. That is just installing it so that we can use the icon. We still have to tell it where we want the icon to show up. So that's this one down here. So if I copy this one, we need both. We do need that static icon font in. But now if we come down here and we paste in that span that they give us, Prettier's mad at us. We'll fix that in a second. that will get the search bar icon to show up.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Now we want to work with that padding. So what you are doing, you added some padding to the nav itself. So that is going to be the entire div is going to have a little bit of breathing room off the top of the page. But what we want to do is we want to target the spans inside of the links in order to add in some space. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, it's not the links itself that we want to add the padding to, it's the span inside of the links. Now be careful here. You got a capital L up here, so none of this is going to be applied. We need to
Wow.
be
Okay.
sensitive with our capital L. And now, because we're targeting the spans inside of it, we can add padding to the left of 20 pixels and padding to the right of 20 pixels. And that spaces them out.
Yes, sir. Okay.
And then the last thing before I let you go, we gotta fix our prettier. So we've got our container fluid, we've got our row, and then we go col opening and closing. We do a col opening and closing. So now the last two lingering are these two divs. We don't close those out anywhere. So we're going to close both of them and save. And prettier is still mad at us. So let's try and line these up ourselves to see if we can find the problem. Okay, so we've got one other issue. We've got opening body, closing body. We've got opening head, but no closing head. And now you're back in shape.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I need help too.
Sure. Share screen.
Okay. Okay. You see?
Yes.
So my pictures are humongous.
Large and in charge, huh?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look. I'm going to request remote. Oh, first of all, really good work because you've got not only your nav bar working, but you've got your hero image in place. So all of that is looking really good. For the images, we've got all of these image fluids here, but what I'm guessing you wanted is them across the screen, right?
Yeah.
So we want you tried to use a column, but we want to be careful. We never want to use a column that isn't in a row. So we're going to put everything in a row. And then we want each one of these images to be their own column. So we got to do a class call, and then we got to duplicate that a bunch of times for each one of the images.
Be in their own column.
Right, because otherwise the image fluid doesn't know how big it's supposed to be because all of these images are just in one column. So
Okay.
if we move those into the right spot,
It's tracking me now, being off my phone, so I need to be consistently on the phone. And she had me saying.
Hey Hazard, your mic is on, buddy.
My phone.
and just
Oh.
like that, we're able to fix the problem.
Okay. Thank you.
So on the right track, good attempt. Just remember separate columns, and then whenever we use a column, we always want to use a row first.
Okay. Okay, one more thing.
Yeah.
So like you see how my navigation is so up towards the top of the like that.
Yep. And you want it to be maybe a little bit more padding and then get the link centered.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, what we can do is say, let's see what you named things here. So col 1, span. So we can target that navigation. And add some padding to the top of 20 pixels. And padding to the bottom of 20 pixels. That gives it a little bit more breathing room. And then maybe on the navigation spans, we add a little padding to the top of them of 5 pixels.
Okay.
Try 10. Let's try margin.
That's what it
No.
was doing when I was trying to do it.
Yeah, those inline spans can be tricky to get them aligned right. I would leave it like this for now. If it was really bothering you, you could look into Flexbox where you could align the items in there. But I think for now, this is a pretty good start.
Okay, thank you.
Good work.
It's my turn, Max.
Go for it.
Let me get it shared so you can see what I'm talking about when I say it.
Now I'll just use my telepathy to just.
No, I know you're so powerful.
I joke, but that was actually a request of one of the guest instructors of like, wouldn't it be nice if I could just see all of the students' code all at once? And I'm like, yeah, you're asking for a lot there.
Okay, so my nav bar here.
Yep.
Is Flexbox how I would get those to lower down further?
Yeah, because two people have
Okay.
had the question now, let me see if I can, I'll request remote.
I realized my question was related to that after the last person was talking about it and you mentioned it. I was like, oh yeah, that's probably my problem.
So what we can do, and I am not claiming to be an Flexbox expert here, but we'll give it our best shot. So if we do deflex, that's what enables the flex. And because they're inline elements, because they're span, we want to do our D inline flex. And then we want to say, it's align items center. Aha. And I did not just pull that out of my butt. Just so everyone knows where I got that. If you go to the flex utilities, first we got to enable it. So we didn't use the deflex, we used the inline flex because it was a span element, right? And then once we put that D inline flex in, I'm looking at direction and I'm like, that's not what I want. And then I kept going down here and I'm like, justify content. That's tempting, but that would be doing it horizontally. We wanted to do it vertically. So I kept going down here until I got to align items. And I'm like, ooh, that's what I want. I want space equal at the top and the bottom. And so because of that, I just counted down and I went, all right, 1, 2, 3. It's the third example. So 1, 2, 3, align item center is what I was looking for.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else who would like some help? Seems like you guys are making good progress, so I will give you another 15-ish minutes to work on this. Then we will take our break at 7 o'clock. Very good questions so far, so keep them coming as you run into them.
Well, a couple.
Go for it.
So I'm trying to recreate the CNN site, and my image for it and my nav bar is pretty huge.
Okay.
So I'll gladly share my code.
Go for it.
Oh, what is it? So I'll share the code. I don't know if you could see it. Oh wait, no, I didn't share it yet.
There we go.
And
Okay.
then I can share the link to the site too.
It's just CNN.
Yeah.
Okay. So we want to be careful here. Let me request remote first,
Not a problem.
and then let me see what it looks like in your browser so far.
Mm-hmm. Oh, do you want me to do it on my end or you got it on your end?
Yeah, can you drag that over to the screen that you're sharing?
Yes. The site I have so far.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Okay. So we're on the right track. And I'm seeing that you have it in the call 3, which is good. This may be a case of just saying, hey, I want this to be treated like it's fluid. So if we say image fluid, it will shrink it down to the column size.
Gotcha. I thought it would be some like a ID, or I did think about a class, but it'd be like a border type of thing.
You could do that with you could say like or you could say something like my full image, and then down here all image fluid is doing is adding a width of 100%. And that also gets the job done.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's slightly preferred to use image fluid just because it's not another class that you need to go create. But the reason why it doesn't default to width 100% is the browser is like, whoa, this is a high resolution image. We want to show the whole thing. And often in web design, we're like, we don't care how big or small the image is. We just want it to fill this space. And so putting
Yes.
that width 100% there will not only shrink it down, but it will also scale it up if it needs to, if the column is big enough.
Okay. All right.
So looking really
Yeah.
good. The
Yeah, I
nav
know
bar,
it's
the nav
yeah.
bar looks great. You got the links in place. Now you can kind of decide, do I want to get more content in, or do I want to go back in and kind of tweak the padding to actually get a little bit more room between, like, these links look like they're a little bit taller on the CNN website. So you can decide where to go from here.
Yeah, I was thinking about, well, I also wanted, I was trying to do like the highlight the live updates, like as you see in the site, it's like bold red and then trending is also bold. And I have them in span. So I was wondering, like, do I do a span style CSS to do that?
Yep. You'll throw like a class on it of red text, and then in your CSS you can target that red text class and make it red.
Okay. All right. And then I'm also trying to get these the US world and to the more down, because as you see, it's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be further down.
Yeah,
So
so we can use flex for that, just like we use flex to center. We can come into here and say D inline flex, and then justify, no, it was align items.
yeah,
Align
line.
items end, and that jumps them down to the bottom.
Gotcha. Okay.
So looking good so far. Keep up the good work.
Yeah. My only thing, I was digging through old files of like what we did to use for like especially like get the images and
Yeah, nothing wrong with referencing old code that you've written. That's totally fine.
all right. Thank you.
Michael.
All right, so I guess I start by sharing the screen because there's one part that there's a I guess a slickness thing that I just haven't been able to figure out just yet.
Okay.
So you see that search bar?
Yep.
It's not supposed to look quite that terrible. It's supposed to look a little bit more like that.
Okay.
So
go ahead and share all of either desktop 1 or desktop 2 with me, whatever's got your code in it.
All right.
And I will request remote. And then if you could also bring that browser with the live version of your code over, just so I can kind of see, so I'm not going blind. Okay, perfect. So we will start with finding that input that's right here. So you probably, your search field here is applying all of that styling in the background, but we want to also target the input inside that search field. So if we go search field, the input itself,
Oh,
we can start targeting things like background none and border none and width 100%. And just like that, you now have your search bar, and we can change the color of the text to white. And now you're good to go.
thank you very much.
Simple as that. You were on the right track. You got everything styled in the container. But yeah, a lot of people don't know you can target that input directly and then get all of the properties in it.
Muchas gracias.
Of course. Anyone else? All right. Go for another 10 more minutes, then go on break. If you have any questions, Terry?
Yeah, so I did the image fluid, but when I'm trying to do my code, they're not coming like together. Like they still kind of spaced out a bit.
So the
Yeah.
column is going to have space in between it
Okay.
by default. I don't know if there's a way. Go ahead and share your screen. Let me take a look.
Alright. Besides this. Yeah. Not that so far.
Okay. Let me see your code. So image fluid. Okay, so that is because, oh, I gotta request remote. That is because you size them all as twos. And so if we take this out, we're basically telling the browser, hey, fit all of these columns into one row. So here I'm gonna just do find and replace any place you've got a col 2, replace it with a normal col. And if we save that, now they're all super tiny because they're all trying to fit into one row. So we can solve that by saying, all right, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Like 24.
7. Let's do 8. So we'll do 8 in this row. And then we'll do another div class row and do another 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we'll end that here. And obviously you can keep on going there. But now we've got them grouped into rows. I still don't like, why is image fluid col? That should be taking up I actually don't know why that's not working. Because the col has more space there. Huh. Okay. Maybe we need to do our own. So I'm gonna hijack the image fluid that you're using. and make it a width of 100%. It looks like Bootstrap is using max width of 100%. And I think maybe because the images are a little lower resolution, that they're not getting bigger than what we actually want them to. So if we do that, and then the other thing that I can do is inside of your row, I'm gonna say G0. And that stands for the gutter. No, get your head out of the gutter, they normally say. But the gutter is the space between the columns. So normally you want a little bit of breathing room between the columns, but if you don't, you can set that G-0 and it will remove it. So you can actually see what that 0 is doing. If we do like a G-5, we get really big gaps between all of them.
Yeah.
And then if we go back down to, 1, we can see it's much, much tighter. And then if you don't want any gap, you can do your 0 and that will bring it all in. So now these need to be, the rest of these need to be adjusted so that they're in a row. But once you get them in there, it should give you the look that you're going for up here.
Okay. Appreciate it, Max.
Of course. Austin, in preview for cropping, you drag your selection over what you would like to crop it down to, and then Command K for crop and Command S to save it.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Let me just pull up. There we go.
Okay.
All right, so I don't know what's not working here. I don't know if this is even the right element. This is just what I found on Stack Overflow. Then I got I copied this over from Web3.
YouTube is a little picky about their iframes. So if you go to this link directly, and then go to share maybe and embed, they're going to give you iframe code that includes in the URL /embed, and that's what's going to actually make it work. So if
I see
this source directly, Google, oh, I missed an F there. Google gets a little picky about what they let you embed for YouTube, but if it's got that /embed in it, it should work a little better. Yep.
There we go. Okay, and then I can just mess with the actually, I can just go back into YouTube and take the presets from there and then mess with it with.
You got it.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Tiffany.
I have some problem with when I'm share my screen.
Okay, go for it.
Here. The problem is I try to move my search bar in the center, and also the negative line here. I try to use the face box to do it, but I don't see anything changing here.
Okay. Let me request remote. So we'll start with your search box. Your search box is up here. And it is in a call. So your call 1, your call 3. So the problem here is that it's kind of uneven. This column is taking up more space than this column over here. So that this center column is got more room on the left than it does on the right. So we can actually fix that by making this column a little bit bigger. And that makes our logo bigger, but it gets our search closer to where we want. So you know what? Let's do this instead. Let's leave it as a call 1 and put this in as a call 2. And then we'll leave this call 2 basically empty. Then This we don't want to justify content and we want to justify content center. So you were on the right track. And that, I think, is what you're going for, right? Is that better?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Sick?
And then for the nav bar, I think you are also on the right track there. For this, I'm going blind, but were you trying to center it?
Yeah, and try to separate it, use the first box.
Oh, okay. So justify I gotta look at the documentation for that. Give me 1 second. It's the space between, but I can't remember what that is off the top of my head. Justify content evenly. So in order to use Flexbox, we've got to D inline flex and then justify content evenly. And that spaces it
I
out.
think I just used it. It was justified content around, I believe.
Evenly
that's
and
what they're trying
around
to say.
are kind of similar.
Evenly? Okay.
Yeah, evenly and around are two separate properties. Both of them will work. It's just it affects how close to the edge it basically gets. But either one would work in this situation.
Thank you.
Yeah, with a lot of those, with like these justify content evenly, there will be a lot of times where I go to use them and I'm like, I don't understand why is this not working? And it's really easy to forget enabling the flex. So you got to do the D flex or the D inline flex, and then once it's enabled, you can use all of those other classes. Looking good.
Thanks.
All right. It is 7 o'clock. The fun is now coming to an end. So before you go on break, I've got 2 things you got to do. Save whatever you have, head to Canvas and upload both your index and your style.css. If you have any images that you have used, you do not have to upload them. So that is not a deal breaker. If it is easier, and I'm going to share my screen on this, sometimes you're working on files and you're like, I don't want to upload every single stinking file that I just created. You can head to the folder that you were working with, right click on it and go down to compress. And when you compress it, it will take all of those files and put it into a zip for you. You can then upload that one zip file into Canvas without having to upload everything manually. I'll do that one more time. In Finder, head to whatever folder you are working with, right click on that folder and go down to compress. When you hit the compress, it will make a .zip file, and then you can upload that one file to Canvas without having to upload everything manually. I've actually written a little bit of a JavaScript utility that when it downloads all of your files, it will see if it's a zip file, and if it is, it will automatically uncompress it for me. So if the zip file is easier to turn in, which it usually is, go ahead and make a zip. You can go ahead and upload those. I will make sure the Canvas assignment actually allows it. Once you do have that assignment turned in, you can head over to yeah, it will take a zip file. Head over to attendance, and the secret word for tonight is pop quiz. 1 word or 2, doesn't matter. Pop quiz for attendance. Upload your files, go on break, and be back at 7:30.
I'm sorry, where are we uploading it at?
Yep, in Canvas, under assignments, there should be one that says required project in class site creation. And then once you get into this, there should be if you hit start assignment, there should be an upload file.
And you said I could upload the zip file, right? Okay.
Yep.
And Max, you said something's better than nothing, huh?
Something is definitely better than nothing. You are not getting graded here on full site completion. However, if you're like, all right, this is good practice for me, right? Like I want to keep going on this. I encourage you to keep working on it over the weekend. And then you can always resubmit an assignment in Canvas. So if you do continue to work on this and get practice with it, I definitely encourage you to resubmit it, and I will regrade it and give you some feedback on it.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
I try to never get more than a week behind on grading. Usually I get grades done Monday or Tuesday, but I promise you at some point you will get feedback on all of your assignments. Break
My eyes
until
burned.
So
7:30. Joe, you
you
have to
said,
remember to blink.
so you said it's okay to upload our HTML and CSS.
Yep, you can do it as two separate files, or you can make it you can compress the whole folder and just upload the zip.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a I guess relevant question. When you save your CSS file, why is it the same logo as a Tor browser? I don't know if I'm the only person that noticed that, but when I save my CSS on my computer, it's the same exact logo as a Tor browser.
Yeah, so it's just you.
Okay.
For whatever reason, your OS has defaulted opening CSS files in Tor instead of opening them in like VS Code or something else. So in order to fix that, if you go to like mine is a Firefox logo. I'm not sharing my screen. Mine, for whatever reason, CSS defaults to opening in Firefox. So in order to fix it, if you go to Command I, you can say open with and drop it down to like VS Code.
Okay.
And then click on the change all button and then continue. And I thought that would change the file icon. Apparently it didn't. Yeah, so it's just something at the OS level where it's using, I think that's DS icon it uses under the hood. But yeah, it's just because that Tor has taken over opening CSS files for you.
Okay. I was a little nervous.
All right, break until 7:30. Don't forget the 30-second feedback form is available to you. So at the end of class, I'm just planting the seed now for you to start thinking about it. We've got 1 week left of HTML. So we're going to do the portfolio site, which takes 2 or 3 days, depending on how quickly we're moving. But after that, we're going to have a day or two that's up to you guys to decide. So in that 30-second feedback form, whether it's anonymous or you put your name on it, I want you to think about, hey, I've got 1 week left of HTML before we dive into JavaScript. What is going to help me most in my learning of HTML? So that could be more projects, that could be seeing more slides, more visuals, that could be anything that you have done on your coding journey so far that has really helped you. So I want you just to start thinking about that for the 30-second feedback form. It is not required, but it is highly encouraged because I am here to help you guys, right? And so if you guys have ideas on how you think that HTML will start to soak in better more for you, that's what I want you to put into the 30-second feedback form. If not tonight, at some point this weekend, because that is not just about helping me out, that is about helping you guys. And so I will review all of those submissions, but want to just plant that seed for you to start thinking about what is going to help me the most learn HTML. With all of that said, we are going to head into the portfolio site. hopefully you guys are starting to get bored of setting up a project from scratch, but we are going to get all of that set up. Let me give you a preview of what we will be building. So this portfolio site you are not required to use, but this is hopefully going to give you a really good starting point to think about your portfolio. So I dropped it in the chat if you would like to pull it up on your own. You will see it's pretty basic here. We're going to use coolers for the first time to pick our color scheme of everything that's going to go together here. And you will see that this is the first responsive site that we're tackling. So when I start shrinking this down here, you will see my portfolio of 3 items across will actually shrink down to stack on top of each other for a small enough screen. So this is the first time that we'll be tackling a design that looks as good on mobile as it does on the desktop. So a couple sections that we'll be tackling, we'll be working our way down here. This will also be the first project that we work on that is a multi-page website. So when you actually click on one of these projects, it's going to take you into a project details page. And these are all pieces of a portfolio that I actually recommend. So when you are putting together a portfolio details page, you don't want to just have the name of the app, right? Because sometimes it isn't self-explanatory. So these are all of the different pieces that I recommend. One or 2 sentence summary of what you built, the objectives that you set out. This is why I built this particular project. The future improvements, because the project is never fully done. There's always something else that you want to add to it. A link section, both to where you can see the code, which is GitHub, which you'll be learning about in a couple weeks, and then a place to demo it, right? Because oftentimes when people come to your portfolio site, they don't want to have to download the code and set it all up. They want to be able to click on one link and be able to see where that's working live. The link section, you will learn how to actually make work later. And then when we revisit the portfolio website, when we get into the full stack module, we'll be able to go back in and put these links in. And then finally, the tech stack, right? What did you build this in? Because oftentimes when people are looking at your portfolio, they're looking to hire you for a particular set of languages or skills or stack. And so having some kind of visual on that. So anyway, this is where we are headed. We are not going to tackle the project page today. We will work our way up to that. We are going to start on the home page, and we're going to start. This is meant to be a visually striking design, right? This is meant to say, hey, this is a really big, bold statement. And then if we click on the arrow, it scrolls us down and starts getting us into the rest of the site. Like I said, this is not meant to be a requirement. This is not something that you absolutely have to have done, but it is something that we recommend because if someone is hiring you as a web designer, you want to have a web presence, right? You want to have somewhere that they can say, hey, this person makes websites for a living. Let me go look at their website. I will detour for a quick second here and say that this is the website that we do as a class project that's a little bit more obtainable. This is my actual professional website. And I will also put that in the chat. I went through a branding exercise, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years ago, where I tried to get consistent on my personal brand. And so I really kind of leaned into this material design meaning that there are a lot of shadows and depth of things. There are some really cool backgrounds that a designer designed and licensed. And so if you refresh the page, you'll see that you get a different background every time. And this is a website that I wish I could take credit for, but it is a combination of a theme that was already created and some things that I layered in, like the background and stuff like that. So anyway, I will leave that there for you to explore if you are curious. That is also a good thing to bookmark because it has a link to my calendar. So if you ever don't want to go through Canvas to get to my calendar, you can always head to my website, really hard to remember. It is literally my name, except it's .ws. I wish I could get maxmatthews.com. I can't. So anyway, I will leave that there for you to explore. I will caution this with one thing. The one thing that is missing from this website that is a totally do as I say, not as I do. I do not have a portfolio section on my webpage, and that is something that you definitely should have if you are seeking work, right? And obviously a lot of you right now are like, but I've made a weather site and a Netflix site. I don't have a portfolio yet. That's okay. All of your class projects that we do over the next 20-ish weeks, 21 weeks, you'll be able to put into your portfolio, and you'll be able to build that as you go. And then once you get out of the program, you're going to kind of revisit your portfolio and go, all right, do I want to remake this site? Do I want to just update it? Do I want to add to it? And as you start gaining professional experience, it's one of those things like your resume that you're supposed to go back every like 6 months to a year and update it regularly. The same will go for your portfolio site. Terry.
Isn't that what like the GitHub is for the put out like our projects in for the portfolio? Sorry.
Yeah, so GitHub isn't enough alone for portfolio. GitHub is a place used for collaborating on your code that just so happens to be a good place to store your code. However, storing your code isn't enough, because if I go to my GitHub, this is what my GitHub looks like. And in my GitHub, I have 51 different repositories that I have worked on. One is my personal site. This Zoom Calendly integration is another. As a recruiter or as someone trying to hire me, how am I supposed to know what projects to look at here? Well, I could snoop around and see what's public, but there are certain things in my GitHub repositories that I'm really proud of that I would love to show to a new employer. But then there are other things in here that I haven't touched in 5 years, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you want to look at that code, I guess, but I'm not particularly proud of it. And so what you run into in your GitHub is kind of your working storage location for all of your code. And don't worry, we teach GitHub in the DevOps module that is coming up right after JavaScript. So that is coming down the pipeline. But this isn't a great portfolio. It's a great place to link people to so that they can see your code, not a great place for you to just send an employer and say, hey, figure it out on your own. So that's why the portfolio site is important, because you will see when I go into a project, I do have a link to GitHub. And if I click on that GitHub link, it would theoretically take me to the project, that specific project in GitHub, where they could browse my code, get more details, do all of that kind of stuff.
Okay. So also like when doing your portfolio, you could link so you could set it up where you did like this project, but you could also like link it to that that specific GitHub project.
Yes.
Okay. I just had to make sure.
And once you guys learn GitHub, we'll revisit the portfolio site and show you how to link specific repositories in GitHub to your portfolio. Good questions. Thank you. All right, any questions about this project before we dive in code-wise? Okie doke. Then let's go ahead and get started. I am going to close out of some tabs here. I am going to head into my code folder. I'm going to go to my week 3. I'm going to make a new folder for day 4. If you have already created a day 4 folder for the site recreation, just rename the folder that you were working on as like D4-homework or something like that. And then the day 4 project will be clean for our portfolio. I'm going to grab my day 4. I'm going to throw it in VS Code. Hopefully these steps are getting a little repetitive for you. We are going to make a new file called index.html, another one called style.css. I will start a live share and put it in the Zoom chat. I'm going to go to my index.html and do my exclamation point enter. I will rename my title of that Max Matthews portfolio. I'm going to head to getbootstrap.com, or you can pull it from a file that you already have open. Scroll down to the quick start, grab my link tag, throw that in my head. I will create another link, href style.css, rel style sheet. I will throw an H1 in that says portfolio, save, open my style, H1 color red. I am going to go live, make sure I get my red portfolio, and I am good to go. We'll wait until I see you guys join the live share or give you guys a minute to get all of those files set up. Again, create index, create style, an index, exclamation point, enter for our template. Then go ahead and throw in the Bootstrap link and a link to your style sheet. Create an H1 so we can test to make sure everything is working. H1 color red. And then in your browser, you should have a red portfolio. All right, anyone need one more minute? Anyone not have a red portfolio in a non-Times New Roman font showing? Okay.
You posted a link in the chat.
Both for the portfolio site and for the live share. If you need me to resend it, let me know.
The live share. Let me see. Oh, there it is. I'm also.
Anyone else need one more minute? Okie doke. So we are going to dive on in here. Let me pull up the reference. So what are we trying to accomplish here? First of all, I noticed this site has a lot of colors, right? And it's kind of nice that all of those colors are themed together. So I want to kind of pick those out in advance, right? I don't want to just dive right on in there. So we're going to head to a site called coolers.co. And I will also paste that in the chat. Once I get there, I'll say accept all cookies and then start the generator. And this is a really nice website for you to just kind of play around with the palette. Because oftentimes when we work on a design, we don't just have the primary color and the secondary color. We tend to come up with a palette of 5 colors that really work well together. And so this generator picks 5 random colors for you. And it also will show you the hex codes up in the URL. So in this generator, you can be like, oh, I like this blue. They call this Delft blue, I guess. I don't know how to pronounce that. But if I come in here and I hit this little lock icon, I can then hit the space bar and it will give me 5 additional colors. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. I'm liking this and this, so I'm going to lock those 2 in, and then I'll hit space again. And that will give me a couple other colors. And I'm like, I don't like either of them, and I'll hit space again. And it will keep generating more colors until you get 5 colors that you kind of think look good together. So you are welcome to use these actual colors for your website. Once you get them the way that you want, I recommend that you copy this link because this has all of the colors in it, and save that as a comment into your code. So I already have my 5 colors picked out, but I'm going to let you guys go through here. There are also some tools up at the top, so you can click on the visualize the palette visualizer up here, and it will give you a couple ideas for that. If you go into view palette, nope, that's a paid feature. There are a couple paid features in here. You can see what it looks like for people who are colorblind, which is kind of interesting. There are all different kinds of color blindness. So if you click on one, you can see what shades they would see if you have that kind of color blindness. And then you can also come into the adjust palette here and be like, oh, I wonder what that would look like if I increase the brightness on all of those colors or played around with something like that. Joe.
Yes, I have a portfolio website already. I was going to use the same color palette or a similar color palette. Where is the isn't there like a color here? I don't remember what like hex code I used for these colors.
Yeah, so if you're on an existing website, let's oh, that's nice. Just going to Google froze my whole computer. Okay. So if I go to Facebook and I'm like, I wonder what color blue this is, if you right click and inspect, you can scroll down on the right side and it will say background color, and then you can grab the hex code right from there, or font color or whatever.
Ooh, can I look up specific colors in Cooler?
Yeah, so if you come down here, you can click select color, and then you can type in whatever hex code you want and build out your palette that way.
Cool.
All right, any questions on coolers? Does everyone have a 5-color palette that they are happy with? Okie doke. So let's dive into our code. I'm going to look at my example website, and I see that all of my content is centered inside the page. So if my screen gets too big, I don't want the content to wrap all the way around. And that is, again, it comes down to your eyes. And when you get to the end of the screen, your eyes, it takes a lot more effort for them to go from the right side of the screen all the way back to the left side of the screen. Easier to read text if it is centered after it gets to a certain width. Terry.
So with Cooler, is there like a way for you to like just like, let's say you don't like one color, is there like a way to like get rid of that one color?
Yeah, so that's the lock that I showed you. So if you lock these 5 or these 4, then you hit the space bar, it will only change that last one.
Oh, okay. Nice. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, all of my content is not flowing out as a fluid. That means that it's constrained inside. So that must mean that I'm starting with a div class container. And because we will obviously be using the grid system, using a container, well, even if you're not using the grid system, usually a good idea for your content. So I'm like, all right, I got to get my name in here. I got to get a little tagline in here. And then I've got to get like a little snarky comment showing up in some code. So I'm going to get the content in first, and then I'm going to dive into styling it all. And this is kind of an interesting one. This is going to push what we know about our CSS. So let me get the content in first. Instead of just throwing this in, I'm recognizing that this site is broken up into different sections. And I could just use divs for that, but we're learning to use more semantic HTML, right? We're learning to say, hey, Google, this site is broken up into different sections. And hey, for accessibility reasons, it may be easier to announce this to the user that this is different sections compared to divs, which may be just straight layout. So inside my container, I'm actually going to use a section tag for the first time. So instead of working on divs, I'm going to say, all right, semantically, this is a section of my site. And I will name this section intro. You could call it hero. Either one would work. And then I'm going to get my content loaded in. So I'll say Max Matthews. Then a little code block in here. I save that, I come over here, and I'm like, wow, man, do I have a long way to go to make this look like this. But that's okay. We will get there step by step. We are going to start out with just the content showing. Obviously, don't use my name here. This is your portfolio website. So put in your name, your tagline, whatever you would like here. Created enough portfolio websites in my career. I don't need you guys creating them for me. All right. So we should have this loaded in. The first thing that I see is most apparent to me is this background color. And that background color shows up for the entire size of the page. So because of that, I'm going to target my body. And in my body, I will do a background color. And I am going to say, I'm going to go to coolers, grab that hex code at the bottom. So whatever colors you ended up with, you can come in here, click on it, and hit Command C or hit the little copy icon. Come over to your background color and go ahead and paste in that hex code. Make sure that there is a little hashtag in front of it. That is how your CSS knows it is a hex code. And then you can come back to your site and you should have that background color showing. Next thing I notice is this text looks really bad in black or the dark gray that it actually is. So I'm going to tackle that next. I'm going to say, hey, in my intro section, I would like the color to be white. Okay. I'm like, well, we're on the right track. I'm looking at this and I'm like, you know, something looks a little nicer here. This font looks like a default. And using a default font, whether it's coming from Bootstrap or the browser or wherever it's coming from, not the best choice, right? So I'm going to use a font called Montserrat, which is a really popular one on Google Fonts. You are welcome to pick whatever one you would like. So I'm going to go to do a search for Google Fonts. And then you can scroll through here, pick whatever font you would like to use. Like I said, I'm going to use Montserrat on mine. You do not feel obligated to do the same on yours. While we're here, I'm also going to grab another font because I think two fonts may make sense here. For my name, I'm going to use one font. And then for the rest of the page, I'm going to use another. And that way I can kind of get a contrast between the most important part, the name, and the rest of the content on the page. So I'm going to go back to my Google Fonts. It says one font family selected. I'm going to go back to fonts over on the left and grab another one. Open Sans is another really popular font. So I'm going to use that one as well. So I'm going to hit get font on that. And when you do, you should get to a page that says 2 font families selected. I can now come over and get my embed code, hit copy code up at the top here, come back over and make sure it is between my Bootstrap and my own style.css. And I'm going to go ahead and paste those links in. So I went between my style.css and after my Bootstrap. Would work if it were before your Bootstrap. The important thing is that you want the link tag, your link tag, to be the last thing in the head. So I'm going to paste those in, and then I will say, hey, in my intro, target the H1, and I would like the font family of my intro to be Montserrat. And if you can't find it, just default it to a sans serif font. So I save that, I come over here, and my name has now changed to a different font. I'm going to do one more, and then I will pause. I also went in and I grabbed this font family called Open Sans. Where do I want to use Open Sans? I want to use Open Sans basically on the rest of the page, right? I don't want to necessarily have to go in and target every single element to change that font. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the body and I'm going to say, hey, in the body, I would like the whole font to be Open Sans. And if you can't find Open Sans, make it sans serif. Now, because this comes after the CSS selector for the body, it's actually because this selector is more specific. So this CSS will override this CSS because this intro H1 is more specific of a selector. The body is one of the broadest selectors that we can use. So when we talk about cascading, it is cascading only over certain levels. So in this case, it did change my font here to Open Sans, and I can prove that because if I right click on it and inspect and do a search for font family, you can see it is set to Open Sans. So I'm going to pause there, give you guys a chance to catch up. Couple things that we did. We went to Google Fonts. We loaded up 2 different fonts. So in order to do that, we went fonts, we clicked on the font that we wanted, we hit get font, and that took us to a page that said 1 or 2 font families selected. I went back to the fonts, grabbed another one, then went to my get embed code, and I copied this embed code head. I went back over to my head of my code, and before the style.css, I paste in everything that Google Fonts provided for me. I then didn't change anything in my HTML. All of the content stayed the same. In the style.css, I added in my 2 font families. So I said, hey, in the body, everything I want to be Open Sans, except for the intro H1 where I put my name, I want that to be Montserrat. Then when I take a look on my site, this is what it should look like. I'm going to pause there till I see heads not flipping back and forth. If you need help, feel free to raise your hand or ask for it. Or if your fonts aren't working, feel free to ask for help.
How did you do the first thing with the different colors, the coolers? I'm still at that step.
Yeah, no problem. So in coolers, you're gonna come down here to this 6-digit code for the color. Hit the little copy icon to copy that. head back over to your CSS and figure out where you want to use it. So I'm changing the background color of the body. So basically the entire page, and then pasting in that hex code. Just be careful that that hex code will paste in without the pound sign, and then nothing will work. And you'll be like, but I have the color in there. That pound sign or hashtag is really important to tell the CSS I'm using a hex color. Back in my day, it was the only way we made color.
Yeah, I don't think my fonts is working.
Okay. Share your screen. It is not, and it is because you don't have a font family specified in your hero H1 other than sans serif. So if you say something like Jersey 15 or Open Sans, and then put a comma after that, and then have the sans serif. So do a quote because it's got a space in it, so the quotes make it safer, and then do Jersey 15. Capital J with a space.
J, oops.
Space space 15. And then come outside, comma, and then sans dash serif. Not in quotes.
Okay.
And save. Your name has changed. And so the same would work for Open Sans.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Anyone else need help? Reminder, this is what it should be looking like.
What was the fallback fonts that you use?
I just use sans serif. If you wanted to, you could get fancy here and say like, do it in Montserrat, then do it in Arial, then do it in Helvetica, then do it in sans serif. But for the most part, just saying sans serif is fine.
Gotcha.
When Google Fonts goes down, it's really interesting because half the internet doesn't really break, but you'll go to a website and you're like, that's not the font that this website uses. And it's because Google Fonts has gone down and now like half the internet relies on Google Fonts. Not that it happens frequently, but it has happened 1 or 2 times. All right, everyone good? Anyone need another minute? Anyone have questions? All right, let's get a little yoga in here and get some flexing in. So we have our name here, and we're trying to get to this. So in order to accomplish that, I just want to center everything, right? Center everything vertically, center everything horizontally. That used to be a very hard thing to do in CSS. Fortunately, now it has gotten a little easier. In order to get all of that to work, I'm going to go to my section and I'm going to add a class of dflex. Dflex is what is turning on Flexbox for that element. And now I'm going to layer some things in here. So I'm going to say, hey, justify my content center. So I save that, I come over here, and I'm like, huh? No. I wanted you to center everything, and now you're throwing everything up all in one row. Well, Flex can weirdly work in 2 directions. It can work in columns, or it can work in rows. And in this situation, my text should be in 3 separate rows. And so I want to tell it, I want to flex everything so that it looks like it's all in one column. This is one of the most annoying parts of Flexbox. I want it to be based off of rows. I want it to look like it is in rows. So I need to flex it into a column. right? It is the opposite of what you think. So because I want it to look like a column, it will be in rows. So in order to make it do that, I am going to say flex column. And that will get me back to kind of my starting point. And I'm like, well, that's annoying. Okay, well, let's keep going here. What happens if I align my content, align my items center? I save, and I got that in the right spot. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got horizontal alignment down. Now I've got to get that vertical alignment down. The problem with the vertical is it doesn't know how big it should center things off of. Because by default, Flex will only take up the space that the content requires. So if I come in here and I say, hey, I want to go to my intro section and make the height be 500 pixels. Now, all of a sudden, if we take a look at where that is, actually, you know what? Let me do it this way. Throw a border on this of 1px solid white. Now we can see, all right, it's taking up 500 pixels, right? And it is centering it in that content. But that works great if my window is only this size. But what happens if I make my window taller? There's got to be some way to tell this div, hey, I would like you to be the height of the screen. That is the height of the viewport. So I'm going to say 100 VH, and now you will see that not only is my centering perfect, but the div by default is taking up 100% of the screen. So when we first put this justify content center in, it didn't do anything. It actually was doing something, but it didn't know how big of a space to take up to center the content in. So when we set that height, which I'm normally against setting the height of any item because it can create some weird overflow issues. But in this case, there's no way that this text is going to overflow. The only way to get it to center is to tell it how big of a space it's in so it knows where to center it. That's not a problem left and right because by default, block elements take up 100% width. But height is always calculated by default based off of the size of the content. And in this case, we're like, no. We're trying to do a very specific design decision here. We are going to make it take up 100% of the viewport height when it first loads. Any questions about that? One of those things that you see the answer and it makes sense until you try and do it yourself, and then it's like much harder to find the exact right properties, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how to center both vertically and horizontally using the flex utilities built into Bootstrap. Just keep in mind that if you were trying to center something, you need to know how big the item is that you're trying to center it in. Okay, I'm going to comment out my border here just because we were using that to visualize. I will save. I'm going to come back to my design, and obviously it is quite different. So most of that comes down to size, and I can target that in my CSS. So in my CSS, let's say, hey, the intro H1, let's make that huge. Let's make that a font size of 96 pixels. 96 pixels. And then for the H3 in the intro, let's make that a font size of, oh, maybe I didn't adjust that font size. Let's see. No, I didn't adjust that font size. So we won't adjust the font size there. But for the code, that code is a little too tiny for me. So that I will target intro code and make that a font size of 30 pixels. I save. I compare it to my original design. I'm making good progress. maybe we space this out a little bit. So let's say for my H3, let's throw some margin on the top of that of 20 pixels. And then we'll do the same for our code just to give it a little bit more breathing room. I save, it looks like this. I compare it to my design, and I am pretty happy with that. All right, let's try and get one more element in here. Let's try and get our little arrow working here, or at least visually showing. So it is interestingly positioned, right? It's kind of positioned in a good spot towards the bottom of the page. And from a design perspective, this is actually really important to include. And it may not seem obvious why, but a lot of people will load your website, especially on a mobile device, and not realize that they need to scroll down, right? That is the downside of this design. If we shrunk this up, it would be easier to see that there was more content on the rest of the page. But when you go for a hero section or an intro section that is 100% the height of the page, people may not see the scroll bar or be on a device where a scroll bar is obvious, and they may not know they need to scroll down. So the whole point of this arrow down here is to say, hey, if you click on this or just see an arrow and think I need to scroll down, you will see that there is more content on the page. So that's why this arrow is important. Now, because it is an arrow, unless we wanted to use an emoji, which I think would be a little weird of a design, a funky design choice, we're going to need icons. And we may use icons further on down the page. So let's go ahead and grab them. I'm going to head to Google Material Icons. If you would like to experiment with a different icon library, you are more than welcome to. I am going to use, do a search for arrow, and I get all of my different arrows here. I'm going to see arrow down, arrow, let's use this one. Because this is the first time using an icon off the site, I need to copy the code for the font. I need to come up to my head and paste that Google font link in. Then I can grab my span tag, go ahead and copy that. And I am going to paste that in, still in my section. After my code, I'm going to go ahead and paste that keyboard arrow down in. And if I head back to my site, I get a teeny tiny little arrow showing up. So for the steps there, Google Material, Google Material Icons or Google Font Icons. Once you get to the page, search for arrow or arrow down. Grab whatever arrow you would like to use. Select it, scroll down to the static icon font, copy code, head over to your head tag, paste that in right above your style.css. Then head back to Google Fonts, copy the span tag, head back over to your code and paste that span in. And what you should see is a tiny little arrow. All right, let's get that arrow positioned, and then we will call it a night. We are, for the first time, going to use a different positioning system. So we've seen Flexbox, and Flexbox is really good for saying we got this big space, arrange the content, either spacing things out or centering things or making space between them, whatever it is, right? Flexbox is really good for that. And we've seen the grid system, which is really good for columns, right? Of hey, I may not have thought about the webbing columns before, but now whenever I go on a website, I can kind of see that grid layout, that table layout, so to speak. And that can be really helpful. But flex here is not going to be as helpful because I don't want this arrow positioned relative to these elements. I'm not trying to center it. I want to just say I want that to be at the bottom of the bottom of the screen, right? With maybe a little bit off of it. So in order to do that, I'm going to add an ID on this called arrow down. And I'm putting that right on my span. Then I'm going to head to my CSS and say arrow down. The first thing I'm going to fix is the size of it. So because these material icons are fonts, I'm able to use font size to make it bigger. So I'll say font size 75 pixels. Now I've got my nice big arrow going on there. I'm like, all right, I'm feeling good about that. Now I want to position that sucker towards the bottom of the screen. So we're going to use a new property we have not used before called position absolute. And we are going to say, this is an absolute position. I don't care where anything else is on the screen. I don't care how big the divs are. I don't care what screen size you're on. I am giving you an absolute position that is not going to change. I then need to tell it, what is that absolute position? So I'm going to tell it, hey, go to 30 pixels off the bottom, and that is where I would like that arrow to be positioned. So if I save that and come over, I now see my arrow almost is in the right spot. Said almost because there's one more thing we've got to adjust. Absolute positioning does not factor in the size of the content. So it's kind of hard to see this, but this arrow isn't perfectly aligned. If I shrink my page size down a little bit, that arrow is actually not centered. It's a little bit closer to the right than it is to the left. That becomes a little bit easier to see when we get different content beneath the screen beneath it. So in order to adjust that and get that perfectly center, what we do is we add in a left property. And we say, hey, the left is going to be based off of a calculation. I want the left pixel or the left spacing of this to be 50% of the screen, which makes sense. 50% would be centered, but we need to factor in the width of the arrow itself. Well, we just set the font size to 75 pixels. So that arrow is going to be 75 pixels across. What we need to do is subtract out half of that so that it is actually centered on the screen. So to do that, we say that minus 75 to 37 and a half pixels. And when we save that, that actually centers our arrow. So this is a kind of old school combined with new school techniques. We don't use position absolute a lot. But when we've got a very specific spot that we want to put it, like 30 pixels off the bottom, it can be a helpful tool for us. So this is the only time that we will use position absolute. It's something that you want to be very intentional if you're using it because it has some weird consequences. With Flexbox, we could just say align item center and it would just magically pop in the center. But when we are using position absolute, we don't get all of the modern benefits of Flexbox. So because of that, we've got to do some math in our CSS to basically get that to center, but centered based off of the width of the icon, not just centered based off of where the icon is starting. So it may be very slight in the visual, but basically we moved it 37 pixels over, so it actually is aligned with the text. all of that said, that seems like a good stopping point for the evening. So I'm going to not give you 8 minutes back. I'm going to give you 5 minutes back. Well, maybe hopefully less. Think about that question that I asked you. What in the next week is going to help you nail down your HTML and CSS practice? That could be a different teaching style. That could be more projects. That could be practice with different elements. That could be incorporating visuals. That could be whatever. You guys know how you learn better than I do. I've only been teaching you guys now for 3 weeks. You guys know how you learn best. So head to that 30-second feedback form in Canvas. I will drop the link in the chat as well. If you are in Canvas, there is a lovely section under modules with all of our favorite links, including the attendance. That 30-second feedback form, I want you guys to fill that out right now. Or if you need more time to do on it and think about your answer, you are welcome to fill it out by Sunday so that I've got some time to incorporate that feedback before Monday's class. So again, in that bottom question where it says any notes, I want you to let me know in the next week what will help you finish out the HTML and CSS module so that you can squeeze everything out of me and the curriculum and the content that you can. Once you have done that, or if you would like to think about it more before you submit your answer, you are good to go for the evening. Have a lovely weekend. I am available for one-on-ones both tomorrow and over the weekend. If you would like to schedule with me, you are more than welcome to. And if you check my calendar and I am not available at a time that you are, feel free to shoot me a Slack message. My previous students know this. I'm usually pretty open. So if I don't have availability on my calendar, feel free to shoot me a Slack message with a couple times that do work for you, and I will try and work into your schedule. Otherwise, have a lovely weekend. I will see you all on Monday. I'm looking forward to reading your feedback, and I will stick around for at least the next 5 minutes if you have any questions on your standalone site recreation pop quiz, or if you have any questions on the portfolio site and how far we've come on that.
I do have a
Wait.
question on the pop quiz, but I'll pull it up real quick. So Terry can go ahead while I do that.
Terry, go ahead.
I just wanted to know where exactly do we schedule like one-on-one, because I don't see it.
Yep, great question. So right above the right below the 30-second feedback is Max's calendar. I'm actually going to rename that right now to Max's calendar one-on-one. And so if you click on that, it will take you right into my Calendly link. You can pick either a 12 or 25-minute meeting. And then from there, it will show you my availability. So you can be like Saturday at 10:30. Fill out your name, give me a quick idea of what the meeting is for. If you would like a reminder text message, you can put your phone number in there, totally optional. And then when you hit schedule event, you will get a email with a Zoom link. The Zoom link is not the same as the classroom link. And then you just show up at that Zoom link. I will hop in the room and it is all recorded as well. So only you get the recording. It doesn't get published on YouTube or anything. I should note on those that those recording links do expire. So make sure to download them and save them if you want to save the recording. And if you would prefer for whatever reason to not have the one-on-one recorded, that's totally fine. Just let me know at the beginning of it and I will stop the recording. The recordings are not for me. They don't benefit me in any way. But oftentimes we cover so much ground in the one-on-ones that you'll want to go back and review the one-on-ones just like you review class. So that is the only reason I do it, is to benefit you guys. But if you don't want it recorded, it's not a problem for me to turn that off.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm ready.
Go for it.
Just gonna share my screen. Alrighty. Similar question to originally. So now that I have the content in here for the video thumbnails,
Yep.
Is there like an equivalent to like image fluid for iframes? Why are these like sized weird?
Iframes are kind of weird because the iframe itself, the content within the iframe itself wants to know how big the basically the viewport is that they're operating in. So you may be able to get away with yeah, so that will work, and then you do have to specify a height. So I don't think this will work. Oh, okay. Yeah, it does.
Okay, so I can just do that. I can just set it to 100% of the count. Well, I don't know if that's going to work for the other one because it's in both images for these two are in a single column just stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, so if you head to ongov.net, you will see that this is why the site is not responsive, because they have not solved for these problems. And so they just set it to 100% width, and then if you shrink this down, it doesn't change anything.
Right.
So that's something that it's like they haven't solved. So up to you if you really want to solve it. But then the other thing that you'll see is that they didn't even iframe this. They made it a static height and width, and then made it so that when you click on it, it opens it in a new tab instead of playing it as an
Oh
embedded
yeah, that's right.
video.
It's not even a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Well,
because I can just stick it in a column, right? Like
Yeah.
like I can make another like row and column and stack them on top of each other that way.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Tiffany.
Yes. Can you explain one more time how you get a number, how you calculate a number and get a 37.5?
Yeah. Great question. So the entire arrow itself is 75 pixels wide. The problem that we run into is if I take this out, you'll see the arrow itself goes over 30 pixels. It's not really obvious, but basically when you position absolute, it is doing the positioning based off of the top left point of the arrow. It isn't doing it based off of the center point of the arrow. So we basically need to say, hey, make it 50% of the screen, but 50% minus half the width of the arrow to actually center it over. So what we do is we say 50%, but 50% is going to take this arrow, the top left point, and put it at exactly the half point, right? So what we need to do is say the half point minus half the width of the arrow itself.
Oh, okay.
Because it's positioning off the top left of the arrow, not the center of where the arrow takes up.
Sure. Thanks.
That's one of those things that if you can see it visually, it makes more sense, but I don't have a visual prepared for it. But we're basically saying 50% of the screen and then shift it over so that the top left of the arrow is in the right spot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions for tonight? I can't wait to check my email and have like 19 submissions of the 30-second feedback form.
I did mine already. I panicked. I made like a 20-minute stake as when we were on break, and then I came back and I'm holding the plate, and I missed like the very first like 30 seconds intro, and you said 30-second feedback form. I'm like, all right.
You can always resubmit it if you have another statement prepared. That is not a one-time submission. So if you have more to expand on, you're welcome to submit more.
Will do.
I guess I have more of like a design question.
Oh God. Probably the wrong one for that, but go for it.
Well, so in the way they have like coolers for like color palettes,
Yeah.
do you know of any like sites that have to do like font pairings and stuff like that?
I do not. That's a really good question.
Okay.
So for the most part, from a design standard, less fonts is usually better. And so you never usually see more than, I would say, 2 to 3 fonts on a website. So I guess font pairings are less common. Yes, you definitely can use multiple fonts, but if you think about like PowerPoint presentations where a team's working on them and a bunch of people have copied and pasted text into them, and then you're viewing the design, or you're actually like going through the presentation, and all of a sudden like the font changes from Times New Roman to Arial, and it's like a really obvious font change, and you're like, oh man, someone screwed up the design there. Kind of the same thing on a website, right? Where like if it's very intentionally done, you can make some really beautiful things, but for the most part with fonts, less is usually more. So I don't know of any like off the top of my head. There is a really cool, let me see if I can find it. InVision blog. So InVision is a software tool that works kind of like Figma does. It's more prototype focused. And they do I think it's InVision. Let me see. Maybe it's not InVision. There's someone that does a blog that's like design inspiration. Oh, it's this one. And so they post on here pretty regularly, and then they've got everything broken down over here. So you can like go into different categories and be like, oh, I want to see pretty login screens, and then click through to one of them, and like get design inspiration from that. They also do a uh email newsletter where I think every week they send you um uh an email with like design inspirations. And that's kind of a nice refreshing thing. I forget when they send it, but like just to open it and spend 10 minutes of your day scrolling through beautiful designs, even if it's just subliminally placing something in your head for other designs. So there are definitely like inspiration sites that you can go out there. But yeah, that's the best I can offer you. I don't know of any font pairing sites, or haven't had the need for them.
Are they user generated, or do they have their own team that makes them all internally?
As far as I know, they are user generated. They normally will give the user credit. Yeah, so we'll say like JD designer or yeah, see, like it links to entirely different websites. So a lot of these aren't even like part of Musely themselves. They just link out to other designs that they've gotten inspiration from. I really, is it then? Yeah, I guess they're pushing their Chrome extension more than their newsletter now. But I think the idea here is every time you open a new tab, it shows you like another design that you can get inspiration from. So I don't know if they're doing their email newsletter anymore. Maybe they run it through Medium. Yeah, this is it. So they also post on Medium, and then if you look in any of their weekly digests, they'll show you just a bunch of different design inspirations that you can check out.
That's cool.
And that's just one. I'm sure there are other sites, but usually is one that I've seen before.
Thank you.
I am a terrible designer. I take everything right off the shelf. I use Material UI instead of Bootstrap, but I make an interface and I'm like, it isn't pretty, but it's also not ugly. And because I used it, it's functional. So if you want to hire a designer and make it pretty, I'm happy to go back and modify my code, but like I'm not a designer and I never pretend to be one. But you know, I know enough to be dangerous and to be able to throw together a wireframe and then be terrible, skip over the mock-up and just build the wireframe using a component library.
Yeah, I was just thinking for the portfolios, it'd be nice to have like that like personal, like if you want that personal style kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yeah, and you can see like my actual website, not the one we're building in class, is quite beautiful. It is quite beautiful because I'm not the one who designed it. All right, final call for any questions.
One more question. Are we
Yeah.
study for the like data structure stuff or algorithm
For what?
for JavaScript?
Yeah, so for JavaScript, you can prepare. We do have one more week of HTML, so I don't want you to panic and dive into this too soon. But if you take a look in the optional assignments, there is one for week 7 module pre-reading. If you pop that open, I've got a bunch of links in here for resources that you can get started on.
I mean, do we actually study for the data structure
For study for what?
for data structure for JavaScript?
I'm not understanding.
Like algorithm for that?
So I would say don't worry about it too much because we'll do the same project-based learning that we do for the HTML. So we start with beginner concepts and we kind of expose you, and then you know, we'll do like a terminology day for the first day, and we'll talk about variables and loops and all of that stuff. And then we dive right into projects from there. So it's meant to be a slow entry, but at the same time, if you would like to get a leg up, these are the resources that I usually recommend the most.
Thank you.
And I think I have these in order, and we will actually go through these, if not next week, right when we start JavaScript. Gotta look at this schedule. Yeah, we will go through these resources. If not, next Thursday, we'll go through them on Monday. No, next Thursday. We'll definitely do them next Thursday. Thank you for the reminder. All right, final call for questions. All right, have a great weekend, everyone, and I will see you all on Monday.